Go.
Hey guys, I'm David Byers. Welcome to my adventure. This is my first YouTube video. I've been taking wood and epoxy for 3 or 4 years now and creating bowls and vases and platters and wine stoppers and going out and doing festivals now for a couple of years and been getting a lot of feedback. And as I'm doing this, I keep coming across different interesting things, so I thought it might be fun to start sharing it online, and maybe you guys can learn something from what I'm doing, and maybe you can teach me by adding comments also. So anyway, welcome to my first adventure. So today we're taking a piece of Bradford pear that I got from a coworker of mine, and I've made a lot of bowls from this Bradford pear tree. This tree was an older tree. The lady I got it from, I'm from Georgia, and she lives off the square in Clarksville, Georgia. Said the tree was a good 60 plus years old. She fixed back up her parents' home and had to take this tree down. Normally Bradford pear is more of a blondish color, but this one's red because carpenter ants killed the tree and brought red Georgia clay into the tree to help give it this distinctive color. So I'm going to shape this with my chainsaw to fit my mold that I refer to as bucket. So the first thing I do is I place the bucket on top, and I take a Sharpie and I mark it to show where I want that first cut to be, where it's going to go. So in a little bit I'm going to go out and I'm going to cut this, and then from this other piece I'm going to make another cut and fit it against here so that we can come up with the final shape for the bowl that's going to go into the bucket. Now I've got this edge that was cut with a chainsaw here, and I'm going to fit this live edge up against that, and that's going to create a space here where epoxy is going to go. And then I'm going to place my bucket back on top and make my second mark. And that's what we're going to cut on the bandsaw now. All right, so here we are. So we've got both pieces cut out to fit to the bucket. We've got this nice live edge. It's going to look good on this one side, and then this other side, I don't like that as much. So even though I'd prefer to have live edge against live edge, that's just not what we've got this time. So we're going to have live edge against a wire brush created edge on this one. And I'm going to take that out and use my lathe with a wire brush attached to it and shape this the way that I want it to be. So, did I mention that this is my first YouTube video? Funny thing, if you don't push the play button, it doesn't record. So, anyway, I did not get the recording of me using my wire brush to create this other edge, but I do think that looks a lot better than the edge that was created with the chainsaw before. So even though they're not the same, it's going to give a good contrast against each other, and it looks better than what a chainsaw would do. So now we can fit these to the bucket, get these fixed in place, clean up this bucket, and we're going to be mixing some epoxy here in a little bit. I'm going to use Crystal Ice White from Designer Epoxy for the color. I've had really good success with this color, and I think it's going to make a really nice blend with the Bradford pear that we have. So I'm going to drink a little bit of coffee, see if I can get my brain working better so I don't forget to push the record button when we mix the epoxy. We have kept the vacuum chamber at 30 pounds of pressure for a little bit over an hour, about an hour and 15 minutes. As you can see, the bubbles have dropped down, so there's hardly any coming out. We have removed the air from the wood as well as we possibly can. So when we place it in the pressure pot, it will help force the epoxy into the wood. All right, so I've moved it over to the pressure pot. You can see that the level of the epoxy has dropped down to the top of the wood. As it sits in the pressure pot for 3 days, it's going to probably drop another inch or so. And I'm okay with that because it's still going to have good height for the bowl that I want to make. So let's fix the top. I can take this pressure pot up to 50 pounds of pressure. And that's where I'm going to take it to and let it sit for 3 days. So here we are, 72 hours later. I'm going to give you a close-up feed of me separating the bucket out of the pressure pot, and then we will separate the wood and epoxy out of the bucket, and then we'll get it back up here on the table and we'll have a little talk about it. Be back in a little bit. And look at that. We shrunk about an inch, just as expected. Watch this really technique sensitive method that I've got for removing this from the bucket. Success. This turned out pretty good. Everything is nice and solid. You can see the depth of color that's going to be in the Bradford pear. You can see the pretty white color from the Crystal Ice White pigment from Designer Epoxy. It's going to pick up some really good character having this open area with this live edge. And I think this edge is going to turn out pretty good too. So I will take this, get it centered on the lathe, start turning it, and lucky for you, I'll quit talking to you pretty soon and it'll just be some lathe action that's going on. So you'll see I'll shape it on the outside first, and I'll get it centered in and get both sides cleaned up so I can turn it around as I need to. And we will see what it's going to turn out to be bowl wise. This looks like it's going to probably end up being right at about 10 inches wide and probably about 3.5, 4 inches tall. So that should make for something pretty. All right, guys, let's get her on the lathe. Okay, so looking at this, I'm making an executive decision. I really like the way that this looks. I like the color. I like I want to keep every bit of height that I can with this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it off the lathe. I'm going to wrap some plastic all around this edge, and I'm going to do a double pour. Now, anytime you pour a second time, even if it's the same color, you're going to see a line. It's not going to be exact. So instead of pouring it with a crystal white like I had before, I'm going to go with like a silver white or a gunmetal gray that's going to blend in with the wood better. And I'm going to turn this into the bottom. This will be the top, and the gray on the base I think will actually look pretty good, with the white making up the majority of the bowl coming up into the body of the bowl. And then I'll trim this down as I make the foot for the bowl. And I think the darker gray or medium to light colored gray is going to look pretty good within the base. I want to extend the height and use this as the base where we have these open areas. And like I said before, we're going to use the satin white gray as a different color when we're doing the double pour. And I'm going to cut this plastic up so I can use it along the edges. And I'm going to glue that in place with my hot melt glue gun. So let's get that rolling here. I thought I would do a little voiceover in this area. Save a little bit of time in the video. It's already getting pretty long. And that hot melt glue is really hot. I thought it would be best if I edited out some of the choice comments that I made in here, as I burned my fingers several times. But I do want you to know the hot melt glue held well, plastic stayed in place. Then here I am coming back in and mixing in the epoxy for the double pour. Filled up the area well. I think it all turned out pretty good. All right, I'll see you guys again tomorrow. Here we are, a day later. Everything is set up. You can see how there was still air that was left in the wood that bubbled up to the top. There were, of course, some small leaks. So I'll put it inside this little silicone container, as you can see. Not a lot, stuff that will clean off pretty easy. I'll cut this with a knife before putting it on the lathe. And just a small little piece that was inside this little silicone mold. And we can just rip off the plastic that we glued on before. And that little bit of darker color after we clean things up, I think we're going to be in good business. Let's put it back on the lathe. Okay, so I figure it's probably about time for you guys to hear my southern accent again. We have turned the bowl, and I did want to interrupt you with my voice while I was doing that. And then we sanded, and we sand from 60 grit all the way up to 600 grit using a handpiece or a rotary drill to make sure that that polish is nice and smooth. And then here you see I'm adding Yorkshire grit sanding paste. It just takes it up to a nice higher level. I like either Yorkshire grit or Axe polishing paste. These are triply containing polishing compounds, so when you get finished smoothing the bowl with this material, you need to remove all of it before applying the shiny, before applying the tongue oil. The ingredient that you'll see me get out here in just a second that I use is either Golden Grain or Everclear alcohol. It's basically as pure alcohol as what you can purchase. It is ethyl alcohol, so you do have to be concerned about any kind of a spark or flame. But other than that, it removes the tripoli really well, creates a nice clean surface before you come back and add the tongue oil. And that's what we're going to do here in just a little bit. Well, I tell you, I get really excited at this phase of the game. Putting the Yorkshire grit on just wakes it up. It increases and the translucency of the epoxy and just makes for a really, really fun process. Look at the red in the Bradford pear that's coming through. This piece didn't pick up as much red, but it still has this character down in the bottom too. So I'm going to apply tongue oil now, and I'm going to rotate my lathe as slow as it will go, which is still too fast. It goes 250 at the slowest speed. I'd like to be able to get it down to about 50 or so, but that will be with a future purchase. So let's put some tongue oil on here and make it really shiny. Now that's what I'm talking about. The walnut is porous. I can already see several areas that's wanting to dry as I'm placing it on it. And that's okay, because every one of these bowls that I make, the least number of layers of tongue oil that I've placed has been 3. It's usually 4, 5, sometimes even more, until the finish is exactly what I want it to be. So I'm going to let this sit overnight. I'll see you again tomorrow when we put on the second layer. I have skipped ahead just a little bit. I've gone ahead and placed 4 layers of tongue oil on the piece. So I'm going to take it at this point, and I'm going to go ahead and separate. After I get it separated, I'm going to bring it back in. We're going to talk about it, and we're going to come up with a name for this bowl. So let's go play on the lathe. Here we are closing out the first video. So the bowl finished out 9.5 inches across. It is 4¼ inches tall, and it is 3/4 inches thick. You can see how everything is blended together. I'm going to take it outside in a little bit, and I'm going to take some photos so you can see the detail that's in the bowl. And I just want to say thank you. This has been a fun adventure for me to do this first YouTube video. It's going to be a new outlook as I'm trying to get into this and learning how to make the video. I promise I'm going to get better. I've made a lot of mistakes with the video itself, but I'm learning as I go. I'm going to start making some shorts so that you can see the different processes where I don't have to show everything in a very long video. I can just refer to different shorts that I've had made to get us to the end process with future projects. So the name of this bowl, I was looking at Ice Slick and going along with the ice color from the epoxy, but what I decided on, as you will see, we named this bowl, the bottom line here is A New Outlook. So thank you guys for joining me on my first adventure. Please, I hope that you will like what we've done, and I hope to see you again soon. Thank you.
Go.